maverick.
A maverick?
Maverick.
I don't know what you consider a maverick.
I suppose it's unique.
Different.
Somebody with a touch of genius.
Wild and crazy.
In between outlaw and the old west.
Supremely self-confident, occasionally misguided, but always interesting.
Either you're a maverick or you're not. That's the way it is. An artist.
Diego Maradona is probably the archetypal maverick.
The impressive thing about Maradona is his ability with the ball.
At the age of 15, he was already the best player in Argentina and in the world.
Technically, he was the most perfect player in the history of football.
I stole the first goal like a thief, like I'd picked their pockets.
He's threatened players, he's insulted players.
The final turned into a complete brawl, led by Diego.
I've never seen someone live as close to the edge as Diego did at Barca.
A world of nightclubs and cocaine-fueled, sex-ridden evenings.
Diego took over entire brothels and entertained an entire team there.
I'd reached rock bottom. I nearly died. Life was very hard. There were 8 of us, 8 mouths to feed, and the only one working was my dad.
That shanty town had its own rules and regulations. It was like a world unto its own. It was outside the law, it made out its own rules, it broke all the rules that you and I might believe form part of a normal society. It was illegal most of the time.
I don't think Diego ever really had a childhood. At the age of 15, he couldn't go out with a girl or go dancing. At that age, he was already the best player in Argentina and in the world, so he never really had a normal life.
When he joined Boca Juniors from his first club, Argentino Juniors, he decided to play a half for each side. He wasn't going to just go and be on the opposing team from the word go.
Boca didn't have a peso to their name, and they really couldn't afford to buy anybody. So we made this rather weird contract with Boca, where they said that they would pay for my apartment. I wanted to play for Boca, and everything went through smoothly. And I pulled on the Boca shirt on a Friday. I had an injury that season, but I still played, and we won the championship in 1981.
He's always been quite exuberant. He's never been a quiet guy who kept himself to himself.
Maradona's stay at Boca lasted a mere 40 matches, in which he scored 28 goals. As much as he loved the club, Maradona knew he had to move on. Going into the 1982 World Cup in Spain, El Diego was Argentina's brightest hope.
Diego didn't have a good World Cup in 1982, but neither did the rest of us. He did have a few good games, like the 4-1 win over Hungary, but he also had a few poor games, especially the last 2, against Italy and Brazil. He also got sent off in that match against Brazil. So all in all, it was a sad World Cup for Diego.
Pelusa, as he was known, arrived at Barcelona in 1982 for a then world record fee of £5 million.
His real splash in the public imagination actually came more from Barcelona, where he was, again, on the one hand, doing televised anti-drugs campaigns, and on the other, reportedly misbehaving or being quite exuberant, wearing white fur coats. He had his earrings.
Going there, he found a totally new reality. A reality that pushed him to make mistakes, and he knows that. A luxurious life where he was given a lot of power that did nothing but help him make mistakes.
In Barcelona, he often says he had problems with the authorities in the club, that he felt the players were mistreated, that he smashed trophy cabinets and had appalling kind of very open fights with the powers that be, that's when he started to feel that players were the kind of oppressed worker in an evil industry.
He had a very big house, a kind of pre-palatial house in an area of Barcelona, which is a residential area, not so far from the new camp. He had his homemade cinema there, he had a sort of little small football pitch there. It was a kind of place that he could throw his own parties. You can imagine behind his own walls, quite a lot of things went on. He did tend to surround himself with pretty dodgy characters who basically, fed off him.
The deputy director of the newspaper once wrote a piece saying that the problem with Maradona was that he was totally alone. Yet the irony was that he was living with more than 30 people. Maradona gave us the impression that he did not know how to read, or that he didn't understand things, because he came here asking us to explain how we could have written that. He hadn't understood the article at all, and that showed you how far Maradona was from reality.
He wanted to go off to play a testimonial, and the club wouldn't allow him, and they'd confiscated his passport, so he went along to demand his passport back, and citing the Constitution and all sorts of human rights. So he smashed a trophy with kind of threats of violence, and it, had to be held in by the security men.
At Barcelona, there was never a question of having a problem with the team. It was more of an issue I had with the president, Josep Luis Núñez. I never got on well with him. He was very authoritarian. He interfered in team matters. He interfered with the coaches, and I never liked this.
I remember talking to Terry Venables, and Terry spent most of his early time in Barcelona, before he'd even thought of signing up new players, collecting all these debts Diego had left around town. Various unpaid bills of the local pizzeria, various unpaid bills of the local video club, various unpaid bills from his favourite restaurant. What this indicated to Venables was, that this guy's life off the pitch was getting pretty chaotic.
He could be sitting in his car in his house and hear a player on the radio saying something about a game that he disagrees with. He'll drive into the station, demand to be given the word. He'll ring up. He's threatened players. He's insulted players.
Núñez at one point enlisted the help of a private detective agency to look into Diego's personal life. And of course, the report that came back was not one that a president of a serious club would want to read.
It comes hand in hand with the beginning of his incursion into a world of nightclubs and cocaine-fueled, kind of fun-loving, by all accounts, sex-ridden evenings.
He'd broken all disciplines in terms of turning up for training on time. He'd go out to nightclubs on a regular basis. I think that it contained the beginning of some evidence of drug taking, or attending nightclubs known to be a den for drug takers.
I never managed to play a whole season for Barcelona. It was always a case of something getting in the way of our title challenge. First it was hepatitis, which put me out for 3 months, and then the ankle injury caused by Goycochea. which threatened to finish my career.
He's a hyperactive person full of energy and very anxious. He can't just sit still and wait. So he would have found that he needs to keep going. And all that happened in Barcelona.
He liked night clubbing, he liked his girls. He tried cocaine for the first time in Barcelona. It was probably purely recreational, probably over a couple of nights or one night where he happened to be in a nightclub and it was offered to him and he went into the bathroom and took it.
So he often says it was the fault of the football establishment and the powers that be in Barcelona that led me to take cocaine.
One of the most glaring examples of thuggery, which was during the final of the King's Cup in Spain between Barcelona and Atletico Bilbao, which turned into complete brawl, but very much led by Diego. And I remember the Spanish media at the time and the Spanish Football Federation being absolutely appalled by this behaviour and blaming the whole incident on Diego.
There came a time when I didn't want to train with Barcelona anymore. Barca had started their training, and I was at home waiting to see if anyone wanted me. I'd fallen out with the president, Núñez, so Gaspar, his assistant, came to see me to find out if I wanted to stay, and that if I wanted to remain at the club, he offered to help in the relationship that I had with Núñez. Because they were offering a contract for another 5 years, but I said no, I didn't feel comfortable.
Núñez was more than happy to start negotiating with Napoli and have him transferred out of Barcelona and Spain and to Italy.
Napoli had enormous points of contact with that background of his that Barcelona just didn't have. So he probably felt more at home in Napoli than he has anywhere.
The mafia in Naples is has got a particular term, it's called the Camorra, and he was contacted by a guy who later obviously turned up to be a representative of the Camorra, and sort of said, look, in this city, nothing is done without, us getting a cut on it. Even you, Diego Maradona, nothing you do in this town, do you do it without our consent or in consultation with us? And I think Diego didn't fully realise the extent to which he was being used by them. He definitely attended parties with them, and they liked having photographs taken with them because it was good for their status.
He was driving bigger cars or more comfortable, demanding private planes or limos to speed him from one place to the next. He was more assertive, if you like, about presenting himself as a superstar.
His lifestyle in Napoli was one of nightlife. He liked the nightlife. He liked the women. He liked the drugs. He liked dressing up. It's like The Sopranos. It's just kind of he was part of that scene.
The 1986 World Cup. I always think of him as a genius because he was capable of doing what no one else had done.
I stole the first goal like a thief. Like I'd picked their pockets. Sansom read the pass. But I kept on running because the ball looped up. At just 1 meter 67 tall, I was never going to beat Shilton in the air. So I put my fist up, and I put my head just behind it, and Shilton came out with both hands. So Shilton shouted, handball! Handball! When I saw the linesman running to the centre circle, I shouted, come on, celebrate, put your arms around me. It's a goal. Because if we doubted it, then the linesman and referee would doubt it too, and they'd have disallowed it. So afterwards, all the English players came up to me, wanting me to admit that it was handball. But what was I supposed to say? Listen, I'd scored a goal with my hand before, in a game among friends. But now I'd done it in the World Cup, and nobody had seen me. So what was I going to say? Sorry guys, I scored it with my hand. No. What could I say?
And the best moments of Diego was not him in the dark night snorting coke, surrounded by girls and a general bacchanalian feast, but giving us that absolutely superlative goal in Mexico 1986.
Maradona had such power. He had this power that intimidated the opposition.
Basically, Diego won that World Cup on his own. And there has never been anyone, not even Pelé, who won the World Cup on their own.
It's a unique feeling. You can lift countless trophies as a footballer, but to have a World Cup in your hands, that's something that every player dreams of.
When he was in Naples, we now know that he was beginning to, hit the nightlife and take drugs at a greater pace, as it were. I think this did begin to affect him mentally and psychologically.
Outside football, he had problems with his life. It was difficult for him when he wanted to go out, as there were thousands of people who wanted to be with him. And perhaps all this adulation was too much. It affected him badly.
There was also a hotel in Napoli which, he'd regularly turn up in the hotel and throw pretty bacchanalian parties there with women of the night. He got stuck in the lift, and the lift was one of these lifts that has open grills, and he went completely AWOL. I mean, he started sort of trying to pull the railings and shaking the lift. He'd obviously been out that night. It was very in the early hours of the morning. But he practically trashed the hotel.
By all accounts, his affairs, extramarital affairs, took prominence. We now know he had a son. At the time, it took him many, many years to recognise this son, but he has since met him and then disrecognised him again.
Maradona's lifestyle had become increasingly chaotic. In 1991, he tested positive for cocaine and subsequently received a worldwide 15-month ban. The pressure had finally caught up with the footballing superstar.
It's very difficult to be Maradona. The pressure he lives under, no one in the history of football has had to go through that.
Whether it's for noble reasons or not, a maverick or not, you can't just stick two fingers up at everybody all the time and think that no one's going to say, hang on a minute, who does he think he is?
My clear recollection was the time when he was actually playing in Sevilla. The most legendary part of his time there was when Diego took over an entire brothel, and entertained the entire team there. Together with, in that city, Diego's famous 180-kilometre ride in his latest sports car through the centre of the city until he was stopped by the police.
The 1994 World Cup, Maradona had trained super intensely to become the saviour of Argentina.
I lost nearly 16 kilos in that time. I cut myself off from my family, losing weight, getting fit. and running 16 kilometers per hour on the treadmill.
The tournament began well against Greece. But the celebrations did not last. Before the group stage was complete, Maradona tested positive for ephedrine, a banned substance. The Argentinian captain, hero and icon was sent home in disgrace.
Diego, of course, famously went in front of the cameras afterwards, tears rained down his face, and declared to the world, they've cut both my legs off, i.e. this is a sort of terrible, unfair conspiracy against my person. You know, he accused FIFA of mounting a plot against him. He claimed the CIA was behind it. And it was one of those instances in his life when he broke the rules and didn't get away with it.
They treated me brutally. I took all the responsibility and had made so many sacrifices. If that hadn't happened in the 1994 World Cup, we'd have been champions.
Diego spent all his life bending the rules. I mean, for instance, when he opened up with a rifle on some journalists who were camped outside his country house outside Buenos Aires, and the journalists did take some sort of prosecution against him, but it never came to trial.
Without football, Maradona simply couldn't cope. His sporadic addictions to drugs and alcohol had taken their toll, and in 2001, he found himself at his lowest point.
I'd reached rock bottom. Rock bottom. I nearly died. I was at the lowest possible ebb a man could be at. My daughters, Dalma and Janina, saved me. Dalma told me that when I was in a coma, Janina had said that I had to live for her. And when I heard that, it really hit home.
He doesn't just go into hospital with excess cocaine. He has 17 pizzas, 5 litres of champagne. He used to smoke very heavily, and cigars and cigarettes. So it's excessive everything. It's not just cocaine.
Let's face it, you cannot get off drugs with an injection or a pill, or even with psychological help. Unfortunately, you have to have something stronger.
In 2001, when there was a big testimonial to him, a friendly game organised with super major figures from all over, from football coming to Argentina to play in this game. One of the people working at the hotel told of how she'd walked into the room to do the housekeeping. There was no sign on the door saying "Do not disturb," and no one had answered. And she walked in to find him sitting in the bed with a toy gun and a Bin Laden mask. And then apparently he was like running around the corridors of the Hilton dressed like this. He has shouted abuse at people. I think after the qualifying match against Uruguay for the 2010 World Cup, when he was visibly deranged, he just walked into the press room and just launched into this extraordinary verbal, obscene attack to the press.
To those who did not believe me, and ladies, forgive me, but they can it, and they can keep on it. I'm either white or black, but never grey in life. You all treated me the way you did, so keep it. I fell, and I came back reborn. I came back from the very bottom, reinvented myself as a man, and quit drugs. You can't ask for more in your life. You can't ask God for more than that. I'm very happy now.
He's always said that he was just born to play football, and his great love of his life is playing football, and he did it in his heyday better than anybody. But at the same time, leading this sort of double life, where abusing himself physically and mentally.
Maradona was definitely one of the great players, with the ability he had with that left foot. It's just a shame what happened to him with the doping and drugs.
If some people remember me as the best footballer that has ever lived, or the second best, or third best, or 10th best, that's not important to me. What I'm interested in is that my daughters Dalma and Janina have their father, and that my grandson Benjamin has his grandfather. That they see me fit and healthy, they see me working, being useful, because these are things that they couldn't see before.